I really want you to imagine a scenario today, one that probably strikes fear into the heart of literally anyone with a bank account.
Oh, absolutely. Financial ruin is a universal nightmare.
Right. So you've just lost your entire fortune. And, I mean, we aren't talking about a bad day on the stock market here. You've been hit by this bizarre, almost comical combination of massive unpaid debts and a freak natural disaster that literally washes your hidden assets out to sea.
Yeah, a total catastrophic financial wipeout, just leaving you with absolutely nothing to fall back on.
You are thoroughly, completely ruined. And as you're sitting there, in the rubble of your finances, wondering how you're going to feed yourself, a supernatural entity appears.
Yeah, they do.
Right, as they do. This entity, who happens to live in the gateway of your home, looks at your situation and gives you some very straightforward financial advice.
Which is?
They say, you are broke.
Yeah.
You need to stop giving your money away to charity right now if you want to survive.
I mean, on the surface, that sounds like, well, the most rational advice in the world.
It really does.
It's the core instinct of pragmatic self-preservation. You secure your own oxygen mask first.
But instead of taking the advice, you look at this supernatural being and you evict them.
Wow.
You kick them out of your house out onto the street, just for daring to suggest that you should stop being generous because you're bankrupt.
That completely defies all conventional logic. I mean, it upends the survival mechanisms we are taught to rely on during a crisis.
Exactly. And that tension, that exact moment of defying worldly logic, is what we are exploring today.
Yes, it is.
But real quick, before we jump into it, if you are joining us for this deep dive on the Simplified Awakening YouTube channel, please do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now.
Yeah, don't forget to like this video and share your valuable comments down below. We really want to hear what you think about this one.
For sure. So we are doing a deep dive into a single remarkable story from the ancient Buddhist Jataka tales. Specifically, we are looking at the Khadirangara Jataka. That's tale number 40 in the collection.
And, the Jataka tales are stories of the Buddha's past lives. But this particular text, it offers so much more than just a religious narrative.
Oh, totally.
It functions as this profound psychological study of human conviction.
So our mission today is to pull this layered narrative apart. We're going to extract its timeless insights.
Right.
We are looking at extreme resilience, the psychology of unwavering generosity, and how we face down the literal and metaphorical pits of fire in our own lives.
Because this story takes the concept of standing by your principles and pushes it to an absolute, almost terrifying extreme.
It really does. Okay, let's unpack this. To truly grasp that extreme, we have to start with the frame story.
Right, which establishes the baseline for the whole thing.
Exactly. The frame story is set during the present day of the Buddha's life, and it revolves around a merchant whose commitment to giving is about to be severely tested.
And we should introduce him. This character is named Anathapindika.
Yes, Anathapindika. And we need to establish the sheer scale of this man's operation. Because he wasn't just rich. He was basically a one-man philanthropic institution.
Right. The text tells us he lavished 54 crores of wealth on the faith.
Which is an insane amount. Like, can you give us a sense of that scale?
Yeah, so a crore in this context is 10 million.
Whoa!
So we're talking about 540 million pieces of wealth spent out of pure devotion.
That's just staggering.
It is. He was feeding 500 brethren every single day. His home is described almost like a public utility.
Like a soup kitchen on steroids.
Exactly. Just a constant flowing source of nourishment for anyone who needed it.
But then, of course, disaster strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a dual disaster that feels almost, targeted.
Oh, absolutely.
First, 18 crores are lost to unpaid debts. He lent money out to other traders on bonds, and he never called the money in.
He was too generous with his lending.
Yeah. And then another 18 crores of his family property, which had been buried in the riverbank for safekeeping, are washed out to sea in a massive storm.
The visual details there are amazing.
I know, right? The text includes this vivid detail about how the brazen pots rolled all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, with their fastenings and seals totally unbroken.
That image is so striking. I mean, the wealth still exists inside those sealed pots.
Right?
But it is utterly beyond his reach at the bottom of the ocean. It represents complete, untouchable loss.
So overnight, he is reduced to sudden poverty. The food he can offer the monks goes from these rich, elaborate delicacies to literal bird feed.
Literally?
But here's the kicker. He refuses to shut down his charity.
Which is wild.
It's like a modern billionaire who loses their fortune in a market crash and a hurricane simultaneously, yet stubbornly keeps their philanthropic foundation open.
Even if it means serving watered-down soup out of their own empty kitchen.
Right. Which brings us back to the intervention of that supernatural entity I mentioned in the hook.
Ugh.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The fairy living in the merchant's gateway.
Yeah. So the fairy sees what's happening and basically comes down and says, look, man, you didn't look out for yourself when you were affluent, and now you're poor. You have to stop giving.
Very practical.
Extremely practical. But Anathapindika responds by telling her she has done wickedly by trying to stop his generosity. And he exiles her. He kicks a fairy out of her own home.
He really does.
And I have to admit, reading this, I felt a little, defensive on the fairy's behalf.
You're taking the fairy side.
I mean, kind of. Why is she treated as the villain here? If I were running a business, I'd want her as my accountant. She is just giving highly necessary practical advice.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the fairy represents something very specific in the human psyche.
Okay, what does she represent?
She embodies pragmatic, worldly self-preservation. In our daily lives, she is the voice of a spreadsheet. She
Yeah.
is common sense.
Spreadsheet fairy. I like that. Exactly. But in the context of this narrative, that pragmatic voice is in direct conflict with the merchant's transcendent commitment to his values.
Right, because they are playing two different games.
Precisely. The fairy operates on the logic of scarcity and survival, and Anathapindika is operating on the logic of cosmic principle.
So to him, stopping his generosity isn't just a budget cut.
No, it's a fundamental betrayal of his spiritual identity.
Man. Well, the fairy certainly pays a steep price for being the voice of the spreadsheet. She gets evicted, she has nowhere to live, and she has to wander around homeless with her children.
It's pretty harsh.
It is. She eventually goes to Sokka, the king of the divas, to beg for a new place to live. And Sokka's response is basically, you mess with the wrong guy, but I'll tell you how to earn your house back.
And Sokka gives her a seemingly impossible task to earn her redemption. He tells her she has to recover the entire lost 54 cores and refill the merchant's empty treasuries.
And the method she uses to do this is just wild.
Oh, it's a great scene.
Sokka tells her to use her goblin powers. So she takes the guise of the merchant's agent. She breaks into the houses of the debtors in the dead of night, surrounded by young goblins, and just stands over their beds with the original bonds and receipts.
Quite the wake-up call.
Seriously. She terrorizes them into paying up, telling them, our merchant didn't move in the matter while he was affluent, but now he is poor and you must pay.
So she essentially becomes a supernatural debt collector.
Yeah, exactly.
But notice the irony here. The universe essentially weaponizes her pragmatic spreadsheet logic.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, her focus on accounts and ledgers is harnessed to serve the merchant's higher transcendent purpose.
That's a cool way to look at it. And she uses those same goblin powers to pull the seal pots out of the ocean, too.
Right.
She even uncovers another hidden 18 crores of unknown treasure, bringing the total right back to 54 crores.
Yeah.
She pours it all into his empty treasury, begs for his forgiveness, and boom, gets her home back.
The pragmatic energy is forced to submit to the spiritual conviction.
Okay, I have to push back on the moral framing here, though.
Go for it.
Because as I was reading this source, my modern sensibilities were throwing up red flags left and right.
How so?
Well, he ignores practical advice, he ruins his own finances, and then a supernatural entity is forced to fix his bank account for him. He gets rewarded for being stubborn. Isn't that a dangerous takeaway?
It does sound like that.
Yeah, it almost sounds like the moral is just be recklessly generous and magic will fix your problems.
That is a crucial observation. And the text itself actually anticipates that exact criticism.
Wait, really? It does?
Yes. When Anathapindika goes to the Buddha and proudly tells him this story, boasting that the fairy couldn't stop him from giving the Buddha, doesn't offer the validation the merchant is expecting.
So he bursts the merchant's bubble.
Completely. He tells Anathapindika that ignoring the fairy was merely the lesser marvel.
The lesser marvel.
Yeah. The Buddha points out that Anathapindika is a converted man. His faith is already firm, his vision is purified, and he has the entire teachings of the Buddha supporting him.
Ah, so he had a massive spiritual safety net.
Exactly. The Buddha argues that the real marvel, the true test of conviction, happened in the distant past.
Okay.
A time when a wise man had to hold to his principles without any of that support, and against a much more terrifying obstacle than a nagging accountant.
Okay, so if surviving financial ruin with a spiritual safety net is just the warm-up, What does the main event look like?
It's intense.
That question shifts us away from the frame story and into the first cycle of the world's history in Benares.
Huh?
The Bodhisatta, the future Buddha, is the Lord High Treasurer.
Right.
And just like Anathapindika, he is incredibly bountiful. He built 6 almonries and gives constantly.
But the stakes, however, are about to be raised significantly.
They are.
A Pacceka Buddha arrives at the treasurer's house for a meal. Now, a Pacceka Buddha is a solitary enlightened being.
Okay.
And this particular one had just emerged from a 7-day trance, a state called Nirodha Samapatti, where all physical and mental activities are suspended.
Meaning he hasn't eaten a single morsel in a week. He is incredibly vulnerable right now.
Exactly. Offering him food at this exact moment isn't just a nice gesture. It is an act of immense spiritual significance and karmic merit.
It is a moment of pure, high-stakes generosity.
Yeah.
And because the stakes are so phenomenally high, the act attracts the attention of Mara.
Yes, Mara.
Mara the Enthraller, the lord of the realm of lusts. He rules over the sensory world, and he decides he has to intervene to stop this transcendent good deed, which would effectively kill the holy man by denying him food.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Mara doesn't just, whisper doubts into the treasurer's ear. He creates a literal, terrifying pit of fire right in the middle of the treasurer's house.
Right in the floor?
Yeah. The text describes it as being 80 cubits deep, that's over 120 feet deep, filled with blazing, red-hot embers.
Imagine the sudden apocalyptic rupture of that moment.
It's terrifying.
A servant is walking through a familiar hallway to deliver a bowl of food, and in the blink of an eye, there is a gaping, flaming chasm in the floor, roaring with heat.
So the servants are absolutely panic-stricken. They drop everything and run as fast as their legs can carry them.
Can you blame them?
Not at all. And this brings up a massive question for me. Why does Mara use a literal pit of fire?
What do you mean?
Well, the text explicitly calls Mara the Lord of Lusts. His entire domain is sensory attachment. Why not tempt the treasurer with greed?
Yeah.
Why not offer him a better investment opportunity or distract him with worldly pleasures? Why bypass all that for these heavy-handed horror movie tactics?
What's fascinating here is the psychology behind Mara's strategy. Mara represents all the forces that tie us to base worldly attachments.
Right?
Usually, those forces work through subtle temptations, lust, comfort, greed, or even the practical financial anxiety the fairy represented in the frame story.
Okay, sure.
But Mara is looking at a bodhisatta. He is looking at a truly principled person whose convictions are so deeply rooted that subtle temptations simply bounce off.
Because you can't bribe someone who has already dedicated their life to giving everything away.
Precisely. That is precisely why Mara has to escalate. When subtle temptation fails, the ultimate external deterrent is sheer terror.
The threat of total destruction.
Right. Mara realizes he can't tempt the treasurer away from his generosity, so he attempts to paralyze him with fear. The fire represents the extreme existential dread that stops us from doing what we know is right, simply because the perceived cost is too devastating.
But practically speaking, stepping into a literal 120-foot pit of fire is suicide.
True.
So how are we supposed to distinguish between unshakable conviction and just being blindly reckless? I mean, if I see a fire in my house, the principled thing to do is call the fire department, not jump into it with a bowl of rice.
Right, but the distinction lies in the treasurer's perception.
How so?
When the Bodhisatta sees his servants running in terror, he investigates the massive pit of blazing coals, and he immediately understands the true nature of the threat.
He sees through it.
Yes. He thinks to himself, Mara must be exerting himself today to stop me from almsgiving. He doesn't panic. He recognizes the illusion for what it is.
Oh, so it's not a real fire to him.
Right. It's not a structural fire. It's a psychological projection manifested as physical resistance. He knows that his spiritual conviction supersedes Mara's illusions.
So he realizes this is a targeted attack on his virtue, not a random accident.
Exactly.
And his response is incredibly cinematic.
Oh, it really is.
He takes the bowl of food in his own hands. He walks right up to the edge of this terrifying chasm. He looks up to the heavens, sees Mara hovering there in the sky, and challenges him directly.
And Mara shouts down at him, "If you give gifts, you shall be roasted in this hell."
Mara abandons all subtlety.
Completely. It is a direct threat of annihilation. Cross this boundary and you will cease to exist.
But the Bodhisatta looks up at him and declares that he would rather plunge headlong into hell than abandon his generosity.
Wow.
He says he will see whose might is mightier. And then he steps off the edge. He steps directly into the fire.
He accepts the possibility of total destruction rather than compromise his core value.
But he doesn't burn. The moment his foot goes down, a massive lotus flower springs up from the bottom of the red-hot embers. It
Yes.
bursts through the coals, rising 120 feet to the surface, just in time to support his foot. He stands on this giant lotus, suspended safely over the roaring fire, and he pours the alms into the bowl of the Pacceka Buddha.
And with that single unyielding action, the conflict is instantly resolved. The Pacceka Buddha receives the food, flings his bowl into the heavens, rises into the air, and flies away to the Himalayas, treading a track of clouds.
Leaving Mara completely defeated. The text says Mara passes away back to his own abode, dejected and powerless.
Yeah.
I just keep visualizing that leap. It's like stepping into a massive, terrifying life decision. Quitting a secure but toxic job, ending a relationship, standing up for an unpopular truth.
Right, where every logical alarm bell in your head is screaming that you were going to ruin your life.
Exactly. You expect the fall to break you, but instead you find solid ground rising up to meet your foot.
That is a very powerful way to conceptualize it. The symbolism of the lotus in this scene is doing heavy lifting.
Tell me about that.
Well, in Buddhist iconography, the lotus usually represents purity arising from the mud, spiritual enlightenment blooming out of the murky, mundane attachments of the world.
Right, the classic lotus symbol.
But here, the lotus arises not from mud, but from violent, destructive fire.
It defies the elements entirely. It
Yeah.
blooms out of the terror itself.
Yes. It demonstrates that pure intention and unshakable conviction actually generate their own foundation.
Oh, I love that.
The Bodhisatta didn't wait for the fire to be extinguished before he moved. He didn't wait for optimal, safe conditions to practice his generosity.
Right.
He stepped into the perceived danger, and his very commitment is what caused the lotus to bloom. The conviction formed the solid ground.
That is amazing.
But this raises an important question for anyone engaging with this text today.
Okay, what is it?
We aren't facing 80-cubit pits of literal lava in our hallways, but we absolutely face situations that feel just as destructive to our identities or our security. How often are the fires that threaten to consume us merely illusions generated by our own personal maras?
Oh, man. Our personal maras being like our internal doubts, our anxieties, and the intense societal pressures to conform.
Yes.
It's the voice of the spreadsheet fairy from the frame story, just internalized and amplified until it looks like a fire.
That's exactly. Our minds generate elaborate, terrifying scenarios of ruin to test our resolve. We convince ourselves that if we take a principled stand, our lives will completely fall apart.
We create the 80-cubit pit in our own heads.
We do. We look at the choice in front of us, and our anxiety projects a voice from the sky saying, if you do this, you will be roasted.
And because we believe the projection, we back away from the edge. We drop the bowl. We compromise on what we know is right because the illusion of the heat is just too intense.
But what the Bodhisatta demonstrates is that the fire has absolutely no power over the one who refuses to be terrified by it.
Oh, that's profound.
Mara's power is entirely dependent on the treasurer's fear. The moment the treasurer conquers that fear and steps forward, Mara's leverage evaporates.
So what does this all mean when we bring these two narratives together? We have the frame story of Anathapindika, who loses everything but refuses to take the practical advice to stop his charity.
Right.
And then we have the ancient tale of the treasurer, who literally steps into a pit of fire rather than abandon his generosity to the vulnerable holy man.
Both stories are pointing toward a challenging truth. True conviction isn't just about holding to your values when the conditions are perfect.
Yeah, that's easy.
It's very easy to be generous when you have 54 cores in the bank and society is applauding you.
Yeah.
It's easy to be principled when the path ahead is clear and safe.
Anyone can carry a bowl of food across a room when there isn't a flaming chasm in the floor.
Exactly. The true measure of conviction is maintaining it when the pragmatic world tells you you're crazy, or when you are staring down a pit of fire that threatens your livelihood, your reputation, or your safety. The value of a principle is tested exclusively by what you are willing to risk to uphold it. Anathapindika risked his final remaining scraps of physical wealth. The Bodhisatta risked his existence.
And you listening to this, you will inevitably face these thresholds in your own life.
We all do.
Moments where staying true to your core principles, to the person you fundamentally want to be, feels like it will cost you everything. It's that terrifying moment where the voice of self-preservation is screaming at you to turn back.
And that voice will use whatever tools it has at its disposal: spreadsheet logic, pragmatic advice, or sheer terror. It will tell you that holding to your integrity will destroy your career, alienate your community, or ruin your future.
But the Khadirangara Jataka suggests that the fire is just a test of your vision, and the only way to prove what is real is to step into it.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over as you navigate the challenges in your own life.
Let's hear it.
If your deepest core values were put to the ultimate test today, if taking the right step looked exactly like stepping into a pit of blazing embers, would you trust that a lotus would rise to meet your foot? Or are you letting the illusion of the flames dictate the course of your life?
That is a lot to think about. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. Make sure you stay hooked for the next story coming your way very soon. See you next time.